Hello everybody, it is me here, Mr. Truth, and in today's video, I am going to be going over what are, in my honest opinion, the 10 worst Division I college basketball teams to ever step foot on the court. Yes, you heard it right, I'm going over the 10 worst college basketball teams of all time. Obviously, this is my opinion, this is subjective. I had to sift through tons and tons of years of college basketball information, win-loss records, stats, and all the, the whole 9 yards to sort of figure out and find out the 10 most definitive worst teams in the history of Division I college basketball. Obviously, no D2 or D3 or NAIA teams are allowed, only Division I programs. Another rule I've set in place is no programs that have just transitioned from the Division II level to the Division I college basketball level. It is simply put unfair to put those teams on today's list here, on the top 10 list, because they are transitioning from a low division to Division I, which is the best division in college basketball. So it is not fair to judge a team if they do poorly. So no Longwood, none of those terrible 2000s Savannah State or NJIT teams, because they were transitioning from a D2 program to a Division I program, and it's not fair to put them on today's list. So without further ado, let's get straight into it, starting off with number 10 on the list here today. Alright, so coming in at number 10 on today's list, it is going to be the 2023-24 Detroit Mercy Titans, who came in at a crisp record of 1-31, 1-19 in the Horizon League Conference. This team was pitiful in a lot of different ways, but they weren't the worst in the country at certain things. But they were probably one of the worst teams, if not the worst team, in this season. But they're not the worst at most major statistical categories, which is surprising because of how fucking bad they were this season. Obviously, 1-31, 1-19 in their conference. 66 points per game, 80 points allowed per game. Pitiful. Defensively, they were atrocious. On offense, they couldn't score to save their fucking life. Looking at some of their top scores, guard Jaden Stone scored 20 points a game with 5 rebounds and 2.7 assists. Guard Marcus Tankersley scored 16, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. And forward Eduardo Del Cadia scored 9.3 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 2 assists per game. So they had a couple decent scores, such as Tankersley, Stone, and Del Cadia. But other than that, nothing too crazy. Nobody else was really helping out in that category. I think that their marquee loss in this season was to Youngstown State on January 20th, 2024. They lost 60-4 to 105, and that is just mind-blowing how you can get blown out that bad. Trust me, this is honestly an inferior blowout to some of the other blowouts you're going to see on today's top 10 list here. This team couldn't consistently put the ball in the basket, and they would frequently allow a shit ton of points. Allowing 80 points a game in Division I college basketball is pretty pitiful. And this team was saved by beating an awful IUPUI, aka, as I know now, IU Indy team. That was atrocious as well. That team won like 6 or 7 games. They were fucking garbage. And that was their only saving grace. Other than that, they would have probably went over, and they would have not won a single game. I'm honestly stunned that they made their conference tournament. The Horizon League needs to reformat or change how their tournament works, because a team that has 1 win within the conference and 1 win overall for the season absolutely positively should not make their conference tournament. That is just that's an absolute fucking crime that a team this shit can make the tournament. Now, looking at those sort of splits per game and their opponent's stats, they weren't the rock bottom in basically any statistical category out of 362 teams, as you can see here, but they were really fucking bad. 42% from the field, 28% from 3-point range. That is absolutely atrocious. Once again, only 66 points per game. And looking at their opponent, they allowed 49 field goal percentage. They allowed 37% from 3-point land, 80 points per game, and that is just not acceptable. Their defense was straight up cream puff. They were just letting teams dog walk them the whole 9 yards. You get what I'm trying to say. I mean, this team allowed so many points in so many games, 90 plus points. If you're allowing more than 90 plus points in a game, you're probably not a good basketball team. And this 23-24 Detroit Mercy Titans basketball team, they came off losing one of the most prolific scorers in not only program history, but in the history of college basketball in Division I itself. I believe his name was Antoine Davis. He was a chucker. He averaged like 39% from the field. He was fucking pitiful. But I mean, he had the green light because he was the best player on the team and he could just shoot whenever he felt like it. And this is the year after they lost Davis, so they were the most shit team, one of the most shit teams at least in college basketball this year after losing the most prolific scorer in program history. And that was number 10 on today's list, the 23-24 Detroit Mercy Titans. Okay, so coming in at number 9 on this list here today, it is going to be the 2023-24 Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils, and there is indeed another team from 23-24 season on today's list, and it is the MVSU Delta Devils. By the way, I'd like to point out that they have a very, very cool and fire logo. They have one of the best logos in Division I men's college basketball for certain, but just because their logo is cool doesn't mean their team is cool and doesn't mean their team is any good whatsoever. This team went an atrocious 1 of 30 with a 1-17 record in the SWAC conference, one of the most notoriously bad conferences in college basketball. This team scored an embarrassingly low 55 points per game, last in the entire country, 362 out of 362, folks. Literally cannot get any worse than that. And they allowed a garbage 77 points per game, which was one of the worst defenses statistically in the entire country. Their offensive rating was 83, which was dead last in the nation, and their defensive rating was 116, which was the second worst defense in the entire country. Looking at some of their top scorers, senior guard Raekwon Brown averaged 18, 6, and 1. Donovan Sanders, junior guard, averaged 10, 3, and 2.8. Arekko Gibson, a senior forward, averaged 8, 4, and 0.6 assists per game. So once again, nothing too crazy. This was one of the most dog shit offense in the entirety of Division I college basketball for certain. And they had a couple marquee losses. They opened their season with 2 atrocious games, losing 60-106 to LSU and 43-82 to Oklahoma. Then later on in the season, they lost an embarrassing 48-107 to Baylor. Then earlier in the season, they lost 30-9 to 81 to Santa Clara, which is a mid-major program. By no stretch of the imagination is that a fucking powerhouse program. Then later on in the season, they played Southern and got clobbered 54-78. And then later in the season as well, they got embarrassed 46-61 by Alabama State, who's another atrocious team in that season. You get what I'm trying to say by listing off these scores here. This team absolutely fucking blew balls of epic proportions. This team just sucked on both sides of the floor, and there's no other way to put it. Now, looking at the per game opponent and team stats here, 362nd in field goals made per game. 19. That's just awful. Absolutely awful. Second last in field goals attempted, which would indicate that they're doing something wrong. 16 turnovers a game, 55 points a game. They had the lowest 2-point percentage in the entire nation with 41.9. Only averaged 38% from the field, 29% from 3. And when you look at their opponents, I mean, their defense was just, it was fucking Joe Biden's immigration policy. Just fucking let everyone in, let everyone score, let everyone in the paint, let everyone shoot 3-pointers. I mean, this team was embarrassingly bad by every single major statistical category. And most of these SWAC and MEAC, these HBCU programs, are fucking atrocious. It's because they're underfunded, they're poorly coached, and they don't get much talent. And this was a team that was all of those. Shit coaching, just a mess of coaching, underfunded program with no NIL capability whatsoever, and just talent does not want to go to a program like this because they know they're never going to win anything substantial at the Division I level, committing to a program like Mississippi Valley State. So that was number 9 on this list, the 23-24 MVSU Delta Devils. Alright, so in at number 8 on this list today, it's going to be the 2009-2010 Marist Red Foxes, coming in at a solid 1-29 record, 1-17 within the MAAC conference here. And the reason they're on this list, the main reason they're on this list, is because this coach, Chuck Martin, fucking decimated this program, left this program in shambles, in complete and utter tatters for years to come. This guy killed the Marist Red Foxes program, and this year was the beginning of the end of a decent mid-major program here. Completely fucked over Marist for years on end, for years under his shitty-ass coaching tutelage. They averaged an embarrassing 56.1 points per game, ranking 344th of 347 Division I basketball programs, allowing a terrible 70.5 points per game, ranking 233rd, of 347 teams in the country. Their offensive rating was an embarrassing 87.7, 342nd of 347 offenses in the country, and they had a pitiful defensive rating of 110.1, 336 of 347 in the entire country. Looking at some of their top sort of players, freshman guard Cannon Rusin averaged 9 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist per game. Devin Price, a freshman guard, averaged 9 points, 2 rebounds, and 2.6 assists. And junior guard Day Kaba averaged 8 points, 5 rebounds, and 1.6 assists. And that's nobody averaged above 10 points. And those were the only dudes who were averaging like above 8.5 points per game. So they just didn't score. They had one of the worst offenses. They had a very mediocre or, bad at best defense. And some of the losses here are honestly rough. They had an overtime loss to Bucknell, 67-70. Their one win was against Manhattan. The very next game, they won 72-66. And this team would routinely not crack over 50 points. They had in their second game of the season, they lost 38-75 to Hartford, Hartford is not even a Division I program anymore. So their fucking program is just complete shit. They're not even Division I anymore. And then later in the season, they had a terrible loss to Iona, 42-61, and then they followed up with a 60-79 loss to Siena the very next game. And then the very next game, they lost 47-72 to Manhattan, which is the same team that they beat earlier in the season, 72-66. This team was marred with inconsistency. They were a pretty young team, a lot of freshmen, sophomores on the roster, but the poor coaching of Chuck Martin is what really fucked this team over for years and set this Marist Red Foxes program back for good. Now, the per-game team and opponent stats look something like this. They shot 38% from the field, 35% from three, which wasn't, which was pretty average, but nothing really to write home to your mom about. So once again, only average a pitiful 56 points per game. Turned it over a bit, 14 turnovers a game. Meanwhile, you look at the other sort of side of the coin here. They allowed 45% shooting. They allowed 35% from three. Allowed 70 points per game. They just simply were not a good team. They were inconsistent in scoring. Their defense was not consistent whatsoever. They couldn't hold a lead. When they got a lead, they would always fucking lose it. And this is a team that was inexperienced, had shit coaching, and was inconsistent on the floor and didn't produce any results whatsoever. And Chuck Martin is the most infamous coach in Marist Red Foxes history, and he will forever probably be their worst coach of all time, at least in my opinion. So that was number 8 on today's list, the 09-2010 Marist Red Foxes. At number 7 on this list here today, it is going to be the 2003-2004 Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions. This team came in at a 1-26 record overall, being 1-17 in the SWAC conference. Just another fucking garbage-ass team. And this team scored 52 points per game. This is the worst offense by far so far in today's video. Just one of the worst in this season. 325 of 326, and they allowed 74.4 points per game, which is also one of the worst in this season. So they were getting outscored heavily. They weren't scoring a lot of points, and overall were just the complete drizzling shits of a team. Junior guard Michael Kendrick did score 7.5 points per game. Billy Hall scored 6.6, and Lee Curry, senior guard, scored 6.3. You can see that on the screen here. No player averaged over 8 points per game for this Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions team, and that is just embarrassing in its own right. But then you look at how bad they were losing to certain teams. They lost 53-82 to Texas A&M in their second game of the season, lost 50-80 to Tulane in the third game. Then the fourth game, they lost 24-94. I don't think there was a loss that bad by any team in this whole video. I could just put them on this list here just for that loss alone, but I'm not going to. Then 2 games later, they played Louisiana Tech 2 games in a row. In the second game, they got clobbered 47-82. Then a couple games later, they lost 60-103 to the UTEP Miners. And the very next game, they lost to Mississippi Valley State, an atrocious team, 48-78. In the next game, they lost 41-71 to another pitiful team, being Alabama A&M. And I can just keep fucking listing going on and on and on and on and on and goddamn on about the blowout losses, how many times they didn't even crack 50 fucking points. But I'd be here all day listing off their shitty ass schedule where they lost a bunch of games. Now, data for this era of men's college basketball in Division I was a bit spotty, so there's not 3-point percentage or 2-point percentage for the opponent, but there is for the team in question. And you can see just rock bottom a lot of things. Rock bottom, 34% from the field, 27% from three-point land. One of the worst free throw percentages in college basketball. I mean, the rebounding was decent. They no assists whatsoever, didn't score, fouled a lot, turned the ball over a lot, got scored on a lot, got out-rebounded a lot as well, allowed a high field goal percentage, and just overall was just a shamefully bad and complete horseshit team that you knew whenever they stepped onto the floor, they were going to get blown out, and they were going to get blown out bad. Once again, they didn't have anybody who averaged over 7.5 points per contest, and when you don't have anyone who averages over 8 a night, 8 a game, you're not going to win one game. Well, they won one game against Alabama State, which was their only win, winning 61-54 against an atrocious Alabama State team, who then, they went on to get clobbered by in their next game. The next time they played them, 67-52, barely cracking over 50 points in that game. But sometimes a blind squirrel happens to find a nut, and in this instance, they found their nut. So that was number 7 on today's list, the 03-04 Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions. Now, coming in at number 6 here on this list today, it is going to be the 2010-2011 Centenary Gentlemen, or the Gents as they are known. And I said something about not wanting programs that just transition from D2 to D1 on this list today. I didn't say anything about a program that's D1 that's going to go D2 the next season, so I fucking cheated, I know, but this season is way too bad not to include. They went and, an embarrassing 1 of 29, 1 of 17 in the Summit, just terrible, averaging only 59 points per game, which would rank them 340th of 346 teams in D1, and an awful 80.7 points per game allowed, which would rank them the 3rd worst in the country, 343 out of 346. Their offensive rating was a laughably bad 83.6, being the 2nd worst in the country, and their defensive rating was 114.0, which was the 3rd worst in the country. Looking at some of their top scoring players, their 3 top scoring players, I'm not going to pronounce this guy's last name because I have no fucking idea how to, but Max here, junior guard, averaged 12, 6, and 1. Then they had Jerron Trotman, a sophomore forward, averaging 9, 6, and 0.8. And then Logan Lowry, a freshman forward, averaging 7, 2, and 0.8 as well. And it's got to be sort of chilling. It's got to be a bit haunting knowing this is your final ever season as a Division I basketball player. And some of these players probably knew this was the beginning of their end of their basketball career, that they were probably going to go work at a Wendy's after they graduated. So unfortunate for them, but they signed up for it. They committed to a program that was ready to make the transition down a division. So that was, solely on them. That's 100% their fault. I think they're actually Division III. I don't know really, but who honestly cares? They started off their season with one of the worst losses I've ever seen any team have. They lost 40-104 to Memphis. And then this is the worst thing, right? They lost twice to Arkansas Monticello. Arkansas Monticello. That is not a Division I. That is a Division fucking II program. And they lost to them not once in the same season, but twice. That is why they aren't on today's list. And honestly, shame on Western Illinois, which is the team they beat 73-60. Shame on them. You lost to a team that was bludgeoned by a D2 program twice in the same fucking season. Twice. 2 times they lost to the same Division II program. That is disgraceful. They had multiple games where they scored under 50 points. They lost 36-78 to LSU. They lost 36-77 to Tulane. They lost 49-76 to Wyoming of all teams. Fucking Wyoming. That team is trash. They lost 70-100 to Oakland, 73-102 to South Dakota State, 49-70 to Southern Utah, 58-91 to Kansas City, 61-81 to Oral Roberts, 57-78 to IUPUI, and once again the list goes on. Looking at the per game team and opponent stats, this team was just rock bottom in basically everything. in every major stat. They only made 4 threes per game. They averaged 39% from the field, 30% from 3, which was just laughably bad. Free throw percentage was 62.7, which is bad. I mean, they were getting murked on the glass. 29 rebounds a game, and their opponent averaged 39, so they were getting killed on the boards, and a -9 rebound differential. Once again, averaging 59 points, letting up 80 points per game, fouling 21 times per game, turning it over 18 times a game, which was the worst in the entire country. This team was bad in every way, shape, and form, and this was a team that was simply not a Division I men's basketball team at this point. It's as simple as that, folks. They weren't a D1 program because they were transitioning down to a lower level of competition. This is the final year being a D1 program, and it showed because they only won 1 game against Western Illinois, who won like 3 games that season. They were one of the worst teams in the country as well, but once again, I sort of cheated including Centenary on today's list, but they had to be included because they lost twice to the same program who was in a lower division than them, and that is just absolutely disgraceful and embarrassing, to say the least. So that was number 6 on today's list, the 2010-2011 Centenary Gentlemen. Alright, so it seems as if we're getting down to the nitty-gritty in this list. We're into the top 5, and cracking the top 5 is going to be the 2002-2003 North Carolina A&T Aggies. They come in with an astounding record of 1-26, another team that went 1-17 within the conference, the MEAC, aka the MEAC, another one of the worst conferences in college basketball history. And this team averaged only 61 points per game and gave up a whopping 80 points per game. One of the worst offenses and defense combinations in college basketball this season. Looking at their scoring and some of their top players, not too shabby. They had a couple of decent players. Landon Beck with a senior guard, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. Steve Koger, sophomore guard, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. And freshman guard Tyrone Green, 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists per contest. Now, looking at the schedule here, they opened the floodgates of the season by losing a staggering 44-76. Then 2 games later, they were bludgeoned by VCU 48-76. The very next game, they lost 63-101 to NC State. Played Duke, lost 57-91. They played Wake Forest next game, 64-104. They lost. And then they played Coppin State, who was an atrocious team this year. They lost 41-68. And the next game, they went on the road to take on Morgan State, lost 68-87. And then a couple games later, they would play NC Central, North Carolina Central, and they lost 72-74 in a heartbreaker in overtime. At least this was the first game they can truly say they were competitive in, right? Facing a D1 program on the road. No shame in your game. You only lost by 2 points in a gut-wrenching loss to North Carolina Central, an established Division I program at this time. Except they weren't. They lost to a Division II opponent on the road by 2. Why? First of all, why the fuck are you scheduling a Division II opponent on the road? Why are you going playing a road game against a D2 team? Why would you not schedule them for your home gym? That does not make any fucking logical sense whatsoever. That absolutely fucking blows my mind why you would schedule a D2 program on the road. Because first of all, they're probably going to sell out because they want to see their scrappy little underdog Division II program fucking beat the D1 favorites. It makes no sense. It makes no fucking sense, and that's one of the main reasons they're on this list. They give up 100 points like 6-something times. The very next game, they were clobbered by Howard 70-107. Later on in the year, they would lose again to Howard 81-105. I mean, this team sucked. They couldn't score. They couldn't put the ball in the hoop. They frequently allowed 100 or 90-plus points. Looking at the per-game team and opponent stats, there's not much data, but they got out-rebounded pretty bad, allowing almost 40 rebounds per game, 80 points per game, allowing a field goal percentage of 48.2 points per game, and just laughably bad. All around, they were laughably bad, and it just still boggles my mind why you would schedule a Division II opponent on the fucking road. What were you expecting? You honestly deserved to lose that game. And they did. They lost that game. They lost it in overtime. It may have been overtime. They may have been a close game with a D2 opponent, but at this point, North Carolina A&T was a well-established Division I program. They were in Division I for like 30 years prior, so they had absolutely no excuses, no matter who's on the roster, who their coach is, what adversity they're dealing with or facing. you do not lose to a Division II program at all, whatsoever, at any cost. And you don't schedule that same fucking D2 program on the road for no reason whatsoever, and they lost, and they deserve what they got, which was a loss to a D2 program. That was number 5 on this list, the 02-03 North Carolina A&T Aggies. Alright, so at number 4 on today's list, it is going to be the 2011-2012 Towson Tigers. Now, Towson's a pretty decent program nowadays. They're nothing special, but they're not a horrible mid-major. And this year, they were atrocious. They were absolutely pitiful. They had a 1-31 record, 1-17 in the Colonial Athletic Conference, dead last in the CAA. And this team has just one of the worst offenses we've ever seen in D1 college basketball history. 51.5 points per game, ranking dead last in points per game, allowing only 69 points per game. Not too bad, but not too good either. Their offensive rating was 81.3, which is second last. I really would love to know what the worst team in offensive rating was this year, because there's no way there should be any team worse than this team. Honestly, in my opinion. Their defensive rating was 110.2, which was not the greatest, but not the worst as well. Looking at their scoring, senior forward Robert Nwankwo averaged 12, 10, and 0.5 assists. Sophomore forward Marcus Damas averaged 12, 5, and 1.5. And then freshman guard Deion Jones averaged 7, 4, and 1. So they only had three players averaging over 7 points per game, showing how laughably and comically bad they were on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they weren't the greatest, but offensively, they had a lot of struggles. They opened the season by losing to Kansas 54-100, so always a great start. But I'd like to sort of get your attention on the scores of some of these games, because they had, 14 games where they didn't crack 50 points. And they had a stretch in the middle of the season of 6 games where they didn't crack 50. And that started with Northeastern. They lost 48 to 57. Then they lost 27 to 60 to Drexel. Lost 38 to 75 to Old Dominion. Lost 49 to 66 to William & Mary. Lost 42 to 57 to Georgia State. And then lost 41 to 71 to Old Dominion again. Just absolutely embarrassing. That is stomach churning. And then they'd have other losses like 42 to 67 to VCU and 49 to 74 to Hofstra. Just absolutely embarrassing losses that, just makes you sick when you look at it. Looking at the per game, team, and opponent stats, yeah, this offense was just absolutely historically bad. Out of 344 teams, they were the worst when it comes to field goals made per game. One of the worst when it comes to field goals attempted. 3-point percentage was, I believe, just the rock bottom. They had the worst 3-point percentage, 27%. Averaged 36 field goal percentage, the second worst in the entire country. And this team was just bad. This team was really fucking bad. Worst in assists per game. Worst in turnovers per game. 18 fouls per game. This was just a team that was embarrassing on every single level. Offensively, they were inept. Defensively, they were marred with a lot of inconsistency, allowing basically 70 points per game. But their offense is what gets them this high on this list. If they average if they average 58 or 59 points per game, they would be maybe 6 or 7 on today's list. But they catapult all the way up to number 4 on this list because they had one of the worst offenses I've ever seen in Division I men's college basketball history. So that is number 4 on this list, the 2011-12 Towson Tigers. Okay, folks, it's officially top 3 time. Coming in at number 3 on today's list is going to be the 2001 and 2002 Chicago State Cougars, coming in with a crisp record of 2-26. Oh, but this team has more wins than all the other teams. Why are they on this? You're going to see. They are on this list at number 3 because they went 0-14 in the Mid-Continental Conference. They didn't win a single conference game. Every other team on this list had won a conference game but this team. This is the first team that simply has not won a conference game. So that's why they're number 3 on the list, despite winning 2 games, going 2-26. They averaged only 63 points per game and allowed a pitiful 81.2 points per game, making them one of the worst offense and defense combinations, if not the worst, in college basketball this season. Looking at some of their top scorers, junior center Clark Bone averaged 12, 8, and 1. Senior guard Danny Osby averaged 9, 2, and 2, and junior forward Kelvin Smallwood averaged 9, 5, and 0.7 assists per game. Looking at the schedule, they opened up with a horrendous loss to Marquette, 49-21. to 102. And there's losses like this all over the board. They lost to UCF 67 to 100. They lost to Northwestern 42 to 80. They lost to Southern Utah 49 to 69. I mean, there's embarrassing losses all over the place. They lost to Milwaukee 47 to 84. And they beat Lakeland, which I don't even know if that's a Division II program. I think that honestly might be an NAIA school. They destroyed Lakeland 87 to 58. But I like to sort of avert your attention to Purdue Fort Wayne because they don't even have a page on collegebasketballreference.com. Yet, Chicago State lost handily. Not handily. They lost handily to them the first time, but they lost in overtime the second time. So, they lost 2 times in a row to Purdue Fort Wayne, which I think this, if my knowledge is correct, this was their first year from Division II to Division I. So they lost to a first-time Division I program twice in the same year, and they beat Youngstown State and Lakeland. Shame on Youngstown State. Even though Youngstown State won 5 games, they were fucking atrocious this year. The reason they're number 3 is because A, they lost to a scrub team twice who just transitioned, and B, one of their wins is against Lakeland, the other win is against a pitiful Youngstown State team, and they did not win a single game in the Mid-Continental Conference. So that is why they're as high as number 3 on this list. Looking at the per-game team and opponent stats here, they allowed a 49 field goal percentage. They were out-rebounded a bit, and they were scored on 81.3 points per game. And looking at their shooting splits, only a 40% from the field, 27% from three-point land, 61% when it comes to free throw percentage, 18 turnovers per game, 19 fouls per game. Just bad overall. Bad. Not good news whatsoever. And Chicago State has been a punching bag for years in college basketball. And this is arguably, in my opinion, the worst year that the program has ever had. So that was number 3 on today's list, the 01-02 Chicago State Cougars. All right, here we go, folks. Coming in at number 2 in today's list is the 2012-2013 Grambling State Tigers. They come in with a record of 0-28. Did not win one game. 0-18 in the SWAC conference, averaging 49 points per game, being scored on 76.4 points allowed per game, an offensive rating dead last of 75.7, and a defensive rating of dead last 116.3 in the entire country. Looking at scoring, they have freshman guard Terry Rose averaging 14, 3, and 1. PJ Roberson, senior center, averaging 5, 4, and .3. And Dimitri Wheeler, a junior forward, averaging 5, 4.5, and .7. I believe they had, like 2 or 3 guys averaging over 6 points per game. And not even 50 points per game. The worst offense on this list so far. I mean, looking at the losses this team suffered, especially early in the season, 49-92 in their first game against Cleveland State, 51-78 to Ball State, 54-80 to Miami, Ohio, 47-87 to Houston, 56. I mean, they were blown out by most of their opponents. 38-60 to Stephen F. Austin. That one might be the worst one, honestly. 43-82 to Southern. 44-60 to Prairie View. 46-80 to Alcorn. 52-80 to Texas Southern. 38-77 to Jackson State. 47-74 to Alabama A&M. 68-90 from Mississippi Valley State. Bad. Just really fucking bad. This is offensive ineptitude. They couldn't crack 50 in basically most of their games. Let's count. Let's do it. Let's count, all right? 1 game, they didn't score 50. 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, 8 games, 9 games, 10 games. They scored 31 points against Southern. I didn't even see that. 31 points. 10 games, 11 games, 12 games. They had like 12 games, they didn't score 50 points. That is a new low. Looking at their per game team and opponent stats, they had a 36 field goal percentage. 36, which somehow wasn't the lowest. They had a 3-point percentage of 31%. One of the worst in the entire country. A 58 free throw percentage. They got absolutely slaughtered on the glass. They averaged 25 rebounds and gave up 38 boards per game. Averaged 10 assists. Fouled 17 times. Turned it over 17 times per game. Only averaged 4 steals and 2 blocks per game. Just comically, and I mean this, I do, comically bad in every single possible metric you can find. You name it, it's shit. The 2012-2013 Grambling State Tigers were the second worst team in the history of men's college basketball, and that was number 2 on this list, the 12-13 Grambling State Tigers, on to number 1. And the ultimate granddaddy of them fucking all in the history of Division I college basketball is the 1991-1992 Prairie View A&M Panthers, who come in at 0-28, 0-14 in the SWAC conference, averaging 64.6 points a game and giving up 99.0 points a game, ranking dead last in the country. Looking at some of their top scorers, Travis Hamilton at 9.4 points, 2 rebounds, 0.3 assists. Chauncey Howard, the center, at 8 points, 5 rebounds, 0.7 assists. Sophomore guard Paul Queen at 8.5 points, 2.8 rebounds, 2.2 assists. Ladies and gentlemen, this team gave up 100 points 16 times. Lost 54-120 to Tulane. Lost 50-101 to Ole Miss. Lost 49-110 to UAB. Lost 57-103 to Purdue. Lost 55-115 to Central Michigan. Lost 63-108 to Alabama State. Lost 90-101 to Oral Roberts. Lost 65-111 to Southern. Lost 64-100 to Alcorn State. Lost 67-108 to Oral Roberts again. Lost 81-100 to Alabama State. Lost 75 to 108 to Jackson State. Lost 71-111 to Mississippi Valley State. Lost 74-114 to Southern. Lost 86-108 to Texas Southern. And to top it all off, lost 79-112 to Mississippi Valley State. And I'm not even counting the losses where they didn't get scored on 100 times, like losses such as against Little Rock, 45-84. Grambling is 77-92. And I mean, there's more I could list. 67-86 to Grambling. I mean, 60-83 to Jackson State. 60-96 to Rice. 52-97 to Mississippi State. 56-80. I mean, you could keep going on and on and on, and it's just, it makes you sick when you look at it. Looking at their per game team and opponent stats, they averaged 38% from the field. They shot 29% from 3. They got 38 rebounds per game, were out-rebounded by like 4, and gave up a couple more rebounds per game at 42. Turned it over 20 times per game, only blocked 2 shots per game, only had 2 assists per game. Their free throw percentage was only 53. They gave up a field goal percentage overall of 54%. A 3-point percentage of 31. This is when teams didn't shoot 3-pointers. But they clearly let people in the paint. They let teams in the paint because they gave up a 2-point percentage of 62.7% per game. That is all-time historical ineptitude on the defensive side of the basketball, giving up 99 points per game. This right here, folks, is without a shadow of a doubt the Grand Slam home run worst team in the history of Division I men's college basketball. The 1991-1992 Prairie View A&M Panthers will go down in history as the forever immortal team to be christened the worst team of all time, folks. Thank you all for watching. This has been Mr. Truth, and this was nothing but the truth.